Inside the controlled part of Donetsk, one of Russia's most elite units, the Rubicon, is quietly operating. They are the top experts when it comes to unmanned systems, especially in the use and development of drones, which have become an essential part of their operations. They spent years developing this capability, and for Russia, it can't be easily replaced. But in just one night, everything changed. A secret base that Ukraine wasn't supposed to know about was hit and destroyed. Along with this, the course of the air battle in Ukraine suddenly changed. But before we continue, please like this video. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much. This isn't just about the loss of a facility, its impact is much deeper. Because Rubicon is not just about the place, but about the people inside it. Experts, operators, and people with knowledge who are not easily replaced. On March 18th, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces announced that they had carried out a deep strike in Donetsk. Using long-range drones, they hit the Rubicon base itself, as well as the control and coordination center of the Russian drone units in the area. This means they didn't just destroy a building. They hit the very center of operations. This is the place where drone attacks are controlled and planned. And what's even more surprising is that this isn't just a claim. A video was released showing the exact moment the drones hit the target. It's clear that Ukraine reached a place that should have been protected by air defense. And this brings up an important question. How did they find out the location? If the base is secret, it means Russia tried to hide it. That means there's a security breach. Some information got leaked. And in modern warfare, information is one of the most important weapons. It's still unclear how extensive the casualties are, and Russia will likely not admit it. But one thing is certain, the damage is significant, because the loss of this kind of unit doesn't just affect a single day of battle. This will have a long-term effect on Russia's capability in Donetsk. And if the center of their drone operations was hit, it means their strength wasn't just reduced, their entire operation was delayed. In an instant, an asset they built for a long time was gone. And in an instant, the course of the battle in the air changed. In just about a minute, the video showed how precise and intense the attack was. It started with black and white footage from the camera of a Ukrainian drone as it approached the target. It was direct, no beating around the bush, and hit right away. After the first impact, the view switched to another drone. It was heading to the same facility, and this time, the target was already burning. But it didn't end there because the attack intensified even more. The next drone went straight for the same building, hitting it directly. This means it wasn't just a single strike. They repeatedly hit the same place. It was a coordinated attack that really made sure the target was destroyed. Different parts of the complex were also hit one by one, and with each hit, you could see the damage getting worse. There was more fire, and more buildings were affected. This wasn't just a simple attack on a single base. They hit the very center of Russia's drone operations in Donetsk. And this is why the impact was so significant. The Rubicon is not an ordinary unit. It's an elite unit. They have the best drone operators in Russia. They organized and centralized drone warfare from previously separate groups into a coordinated and state-supported setup. They trained the pilots, and they also developed the technology. They are responsible for strikes that hit not only the front lines, but also the rear, such as Ukraine's logistics and radar systems. They don't just use drones, they are changing the way these are used in war, but no matter how good they are, they still need a base. They need a place where they control, plan, and run their operations. And that's exactly what Ukraine hit. Now, because the control center was destroyed, the unit can't immediately return to operations. It's not that easy to replace what's lost, and it's also not that easy to restore coordination. While they're trying to recover, Ukraine has the advantage because they're probably already monitoring where the remaining members of the unit are going. And when Rubicon sets up a new base again, that could become a target once more. With just one strike, they didn't just destroy it. They also reduced the pressure experienced by their own drone units and temporarily decreased Russia's ability to attack from the air. Rubicon is not just an ordinary drone unit. According to the Kyiv Independent, their main job is to hunt down and target Ukraine's drone operators. This means they don't just attack, they are weakening Ukraine's ability to use drones. And they've been effective at it. In just a few months during 2025, the number of their strikes suddenly increased from hundreds to thousands each month. This means they grew stronger quickly and just as quickly became a problem for Ukraine. Rubicon is a puzzle for Ukraine. Inside, it's not visible because of the direct targeting of their base and control center. This is the problem facing Rubicon in 2026. Within the unit itself, cracks are starting to appear. There are soldiers who are fed up with what's happening. One of the biggest examples of this is the defection of an elite drone operator. This person is Miroslav Simonov. He was not originally a soldier. He was a former real estate professional, but he was forced to join the military because of conscription. He was given two choices: to go to the front line or work in the logistics unit. He chose the safer option, but eventually he still ended up in Rubicon. He tried to escape but was caught. As punishment, he was sent to the front line as an assault soldier. Instead of continuing the fight, he made a decision. He contacted the Ukrainian program that helps those who want to surrender. He walked more than 10 kilometers to get close and surrender. It was a dangerous move, but he still did it. That was where his experience inside the Russian military ended. But he saw something he didn't expect. While he was being taken by Ukrainian forces, another Russian soldier was captured and wounded. Instead of leaving him behind, a Ukrainian soldier carried him to safety. It was a simple scene, but for Simonov, it meant a lot. There, he saw the difference between the two sides. And in the midst of all this, Russia's problems are getting worse. It's not just because of Ukraine's strikes, but also because even within their own group, there are people starting to break away. And when external pressure combines with internal weakening, that's when the true collapse of a unit begins. Ukraine really needs a new approach, because according to former U.S. Green Beret Brian Pickens, most of the important targets in today's war are between 30 and 100 kilometers away. These are not on the front line, nor are they too deep. They're in the middle, the area where Russia hides its most important assets. This is where they place the systems protected by electronic warfare. This is what they rely on to keep their operations intact. And this used to be a problem for Ukraine. They could attack the front, and they could also attack from afar, but in the middle, they were lacking. And that's where Russia gains an advantage, because while they deplete the front line using expendable forces, the more valuable equipment at the back remains safe. But now, that has changed, because the drones that used to be available only to Russia, like the ones used by Rubicon, are now also available to Ukraine. And not only do they have them, they're now using them effectively. They are combining clearer information with the ability to hit targets precisely in occupied areas. They are no longer limited and no longer lacking. Their equipment is now complete. There are frontline drones, mid-range drones, and long-range drones. Each has its own role. And when they are combined, they gain more control over the course of the battle. And this isn't just speculation. You can see it in the numbers. According to the Kyiv Post, Ukraine's attacks have increased in 2026. In just the first half of March, they have already conducted a dozen major strikes at mid and long range. And if this pace continues, they will surpass their previous record. Not only are the attacks increasing, but the swarm is also getting bigger. Before, there were only about 50 to 70 drones per attack, but now it reaches 100 to 200. This means they're stronger, more coordinated, and harder to stop. And most importantly, they're almost equal to Russia when it comes to the number of mid-range and long-range drones being used. This means it's no longer one-sided. Russia is no longer the only one with this capability. Now both sides have it. And this is where the most important point comes in. Ukraine is now able to carry out strikes like what they did against Rubicon. This isn't just luck, and it's not a one-time event. This is the result of a capability they gradually developed. It's a capability that now allows them to hit places they couldn't reach before. And when this kind of capability is used continuously, it will become even harder for Russia to hide their valuable equipment. Because at this point, there is no truly safe place anymore. Just a few months ago, Russia had a clear safe zone. As long as their valuable equipment was a few dozen kilometers behind the front line, they felt confident it couldn't be reached or hit right away. But now, that's gone. The idea that the rear is safe has disappeared, and Russia feels this. Because Ukraine is not just increasing the number of drones. They're also changing the way they use them. They took the idea of drone swarms that Russia has been using for a long time, but they didn't just copy it. They improved it and combined it with clearer information. Because of this, the targets are no longer random. Now they're hitting the most important military assets, the ones with the biggest impact. And this is where another major blow comes in. It wasn't just Rubicon that was hit. Even Russia's aircraft capability was affected. On March 16th, Ukrainian drones flew deep into Russia, reaching as far as Ulyanovsk. That's far, about 800 kilometers from the border. This means they're not just reaching border areas anymore, but even deep inside Russia itself. That's where they hit Aviastar SP. It's an important facility that manufactures and repairs major military aircraft. This isn't just a simple factory. It's one of the key facilities supporting Russia's air operations. In that strike, the parking areas and aircraft shelters were hit. But more importantly, Russia's ability to produce and maintain aircraft was hit. This includes cargo aircraft, transport aircraft, and refueling aircraft. All of these are important for moving troops and equipment. In a single attack, 3 important components were affected at the same time: transport, logistics, and aerial refueling. And it didn't end there. The next day, March 17, another strike was carried out. This time, the target was the 123rd Aircraft Repair Plant in Novgorod. This is a facility focused on repairing and upgrading military transport aircraft. This means that while the first strike hit production, the next one hit maintenance. In other words, even the existing airplanes will have a harder time being repaired and returned to operation. And again, there is evidence. There are photos showing that the drones hit. This is the real effect of Ukraine's combined mid-range and long-range drone strategy. They're not just striking targets on the battlefield. They're hitting the enemy's entire operation, from production to repair to deployment. And when these are affected, they can't be replaced or recovered right away. With every strike, Russia's ability to move, supply, and continue operations is gradually reduced. And here, one thing becomes clear. The fight now is not just about who has more weapons, but about who can destroy the enemy's capability faster. The target Ukraine hit wasn't chosen at random. It was carefully chosen. The plant that was hit has its own runway. This means it can receive large aircraft directly at the facility. There's no need to transfer them to another base because they can go straight in for repair, and inside the facility there are hangars used to repair and service different types of Russian military aircraft. This includes the Il-76 used for transport, as well as smaller aircraft with utility roles. This means it's not just a simple repair shop. This is an important part of Russia's entire air capability. Now, because of 2 consecutive strikes on March 16 and March 17, something became clear. Ukraine did not neglect deep strikes even after they added mid-range capability. They are doing both at the same time. While they are hitting targets in the occupied areas, they are also striking inside Russia itself. And here the impact becomes even heavier because the 2 targets they chose are both important to the Air Force. The first one hit production and the second one hit repair. This means you can no longer produce new aircraft, and it will also be harder to repair the existing aircraft right away. As a result, Russia's ability to support their own troops gradually diminished. If the attack on Rubicon was meant to weaken drone capability, these 2 strikes, on the other hand, hit logistics because air transport is one of the most important parts of military operations. This is how equipment is moved, how troops are transferred, and how operations in different areas are supported. When this is affected, it's not immediately obvious at first, but as time goes by, the effects will show. There will be delays, there will be a shortage of supplies. The equipment that should be at the front line won't be able to get there. The soldiers who should have been deployed get stuck. And when that happens, the attack at the front weakens. The units become more vulnerable. Casualties rise. And the longer this situation goes on, the harder it is for Russia to maintain their momentum. Because even if they send replacement soldiers, if they're lacking in training and not prepared, they can't immediately make up for the lost capability. Overall, you can see a clear pattern. Ukraine isn't just targeting the soldiers. They're hitting the whole support system behind the soldiers. And when that operation is disrupted, the entire operation gradually weakens. One of the reasons why units like Rubicon became so important is because Russia failed to properly use what should have been their major advantage in the air. On paper, their force is stronger. They have more planes and greater resources. But in the actual battle, that didn't play out. According to data from the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine, Russia has lost hundreds of aircraft and helicopters since the war began. Billions of dollars worth of equipment have been lost. Because of this, they were forced to move their planes away from the front line. They no longer come in close. Instead, they just use missiles and glide bombs from a much greater distance. It's safer and more controlled. But now, even the distance that used to be safe is changing. Because if Ukraine knows where the aircraft or facilities are, they can now reach them. And that's exactly what they showed in the strikes they carried out. 2 aircraft-related facilities were hit. Both burned and both affected Russia's capability in the air. And this isn't just about losing a building. The impact is much deeper. Because Russia has a bigger problem. Their aviation sector is gradually weakening. There are incidents that show this. There have been aircraft that crashed and pilots who died even though they weren't in actual combat yet. There are malfunctions happening even when the planes are still inside the hangar. This means there's a problem with maintenance and a problem with quality. And one of the main reasons for this is the lack of spare parts. Because of the sanctions, they can no longer easily get critical components. So even if they have aircraft, not all of them are operational and not all of them are in good condition. Now, if the repair and manufacturing plants are also hit, the situation gets even worse. It's not just the planes that get damaged. Even the parts and everything needed to keep them running are affected. And when the supply of parts is disrupted, even the remaining aircraft will gradually go out of operation. This is the quieter but more serious impact. It's not immediately obvious at first, but as time goes by, you can really feel it. The number of usable aircraft gradually decreases. Their capability in the air slowly weakens. And here, it becomes clearer why Ukraine targets these kinds of facilities. It's not just to slow down Russia, but to completely weaken its ability to fight in the air. When air support is gone, it becomes much harder for the soldiers on the ground. When it gets to the point where they're taking parts from one plane to fix another, it means the supply is really lacking, not just the parts. So what Russia is doing now is dismantling their own aircraft just to keep others running. It's like sacrificing one to keep another alive. And Ukraine knows this. And they're taking advantage of it. Not only did they hit an important target in Donetsk, they also did this in Ulyanovsk and Staraya Russa. 3 different places, but the same effect. The weakening of Russia's air capability. Right now, aircraft components in Russia are almost as valuable as gold. They're replaceable but hard to get, and when they're damaged or lost, they can't be replaced right away. So every strike by Ukraine on this kind of target isn't just simple damage. This is a direct reduction of Russia's capability, and as time goes by, it becomes even more severe. Because Ukraine is combining different types of attacks. It's not just one method. They're combining mid-range and long-range strikes. While bases in occupied areas are being hit, targets inside Russia itself are also being struck. And as drone units like Rubicon are being destroyed, the Air Force is also weakening due to the loss of production and repair capability. A series of consecutive hits, a move that gradually weakens the enemy's entire strength. And it doesn't end here. While all of this was happening, Ukraine launched one of its largest drone raids. And this time, it's not just bases or facilities that are the targets, but the center itself, Moscow. And that's where the battle will really heat up. And when this happened, the conflict escalated. It's no longer just about the front line or areas close to the conflict. It has reached the point where even the most important city in Russia is no longer safe. When Moscow was hit, Ukraine's message was clear. If they can reach the center of power, then there is no place that can be considered out of reach. And this isn't just about physical damage. Its impact on people's minds is even greater. When a country can no longer protect its own capital, the sense of security changes. It's not just the military that's affected, but also ordinary people and their trust in the government. In this kind of situation where Russia is forced to adjust, they need to shift their resources and increase defenses within the country. More air defense systems need to be deployed in cities like Moscow. But every system that is moved there comes with a trade-off because it reduces defenses in other areas. This is where you can see the real effect of Ukraine's strategy. They're not just hitting targets, they're also forcing Russia to split its attention and resources. Russia has to choose where to focus. On the front line, on bases and logistics, or inside their own country. And wherever they look, there will be weaknesses left behind. As time goes on, it becomes harder for Russia to control the situation, because the problem is no longer just one thing. There's fighting on the front line, strikes at the rear, attacks inside the country, and pressure from the economy and even within their own ranks. In this kind of setup, no matter how strong a country is, it also gets tired from continuous pressure. Not immediately, but gradually. And that's what Ukraine is doing. They're not just relying on one big battle, but on a series of blows that gradually weaken the enemy. And as this continues, one thing becomes clearer. The fight is no longer just about strength or the number of weapons. It's about who can adapt faster, plan more clearly, and keep going even in the midst of constant pressure. And as time goes by, the effects of this kind of fight become more apparent. You don't see it right away in a day or a week, but when you add up every strike, every target hit, and every capability reduced, the balance slowly starts to shift. It's no longer just about who has more soldiers or more weapons. What's more important now is who can come up with a better way to weaken the enemy. With every strike on bases, facilities, and key parts of operations, Ukraine is showing that they can control where and when they attack. They're no longer just reacting. They're now the ones dictating the flow of the battle. And when you're the one dictating the flow of the battle, the enemy is forced to follow. They're forced to adjust even if they don't want to. They're forced to spend more resources just to keep up with the situation. But while they're doing that, they're only getting more exhausted. They're finding it even harder to maintain the same level of operations everywhere. And this is where the direction of the battle becomes clear. This isn't a sudden change, but a slow yet continuous shift of control. And when it reaches the point where the enemy can no longer keep up with the pace of change, that's when it becomes difficult to restore the previous balance. Let's see.